fun to watch anyways. The creativity of, how he did that. I wish I was that good. I don't know about that. A great orator? Oh, you flatter me. You flatter me. What's the word? I don't know. Oh, well. I don't know where I was going with that.
What they say? What they say? The greatest form of flattery, like imitation.
Yep.
Man, so
imitation. I want to be like you, Shane, when I grow up.
All right, hang on a second, because I'm gonna. Hang on.
Hold on. You need the mic?
Nope, not yet.
Oh, okay. Are we recording?
Have you ever heard the?
Oh, we recording, Shane. I got thumbs up.
We're
We're live. We're live and in color, coming from you from the heart of downtown Huntsville. It's Q the Messenger, and I'm here with Shane the Brain and our illustrious producer, Kevin the Boss Man Richardson. Today, we have a very, very, very special guest. We got a Gepisode. It's been a long time coming. A Gepisode. Yes, would you like me to reintroduce you? Or would you like to introduce yourself?
I don't know. Let me hear what y'all got.
Okay. Here what we got. Okay, we're sitting here with Janna Peterson, the founder / executive director of, what is it called? 57 Northampton.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I'm going to read a little bit about that. Yay! All right. 57 Northampton is an Alabama-based organization that works to provide mental health therapy with licensed counselors to those without access. Additionally, we work alongside mental health professionals and local entrepreneurs to develop fun and innovative programs, events, and materials that teach mental health and coping strategies that help our audience develop and reinforce healthy habits that are theirs for life. Okay.
Yeah.
And then that's a lot.
And that lets me know that I need to update the website.
You need to update the website. See. We learn as we go. Okay. And then y'all have a vision statement that just says cope, learn, thrive.
Yes, sir.
3 words. Very easy to remember.
Yes.
Cope, learn. 3 powerful words though.
I always wonder how people take that, because I'm like, I know that it's really short. Cope, learn, thrive. I say it like it's 3 sentences almost. You know what I mean? And I've always wondered. I'm like, it makes a lot of sense to me. It makes a lot of sense to the board. I've always wondered like what that means to other people.
You want me to answer what it means to me? When I read it, I get simplicity, but that's not taking away the power of the words themselves, because simplicity is the greatest form of sophistication. So it's very easy to remember when you read cope, learn, thrive. When you read that, you like, okay, I can remember that. I know 57 Northampton. That's what they're all about.
Yes.
Cope. It's no long mission statement. I got to try to keep up with her. Every time they ask me what they all about, I got to go to my phone and say, oh man, let me find out. Cope, learn, thrive.
Words. Cope, learn, thrive.
Cope, learn, thrive. All right. Which is what? CLT. CLT.
I had
Control Alt Delete. CLT. Hey, see? That's it. I don't know. Go ahead.
We really running with this?
All right.
I mean, I'm joking.
No, but I'm gonna run with that. When you hit Control Alt Delete, what happens? You refresh, right? You start over.
Listen.
You come up with something new. You stop what you were doing and you do something different, right?
You cooking, Shane. Keep going.
Control Alt Delete. Does that not make sense though?
You know what?
I didn't think about it until just then, but when you think about it, you hit Control Alt Delete.
We got some new merch coming.
If anything, you came down here just for that.
Out with the old, in with the new. There you go.
Nice.
Look, you got to credit me on the T-shirt. That's all I'm saying.
I got you. Listen.
Look, credit Vendor Chronicles. Credit Vendor Chronicles. Credit Vendor Chronicles. That's what it needs to be. Yeah, for sure.
I love that.
Cope, learn, thrive.
No, listen.
It's interesting that he started with that, because I did take some notes as I was down here real early, and I wanted to browse your social media presence and have a couple of points. I don't want to walk in here like I didn't know what I was talking about. Q did the same thing, by the way. He showed up early and was doing the same thing. I was like, well, we'll just research together then, because here we go. But that cope, learn, thrive is something that we talked about at the coffee shop before we came down here. And since you said you're always interested, I'll give you my quick take. I'm always the one to pontificate. I knew I was going to get an echo on that. But so if you're going through something tough, the first thing you got to do is learn how to cope with it.
Yes.
You can't do anything. Sometimes all you can do is handle what's being thrown at you. But once you get to the point where you can cope with it, then learn from either the mistakes that you made or from, your lack of knowledge, whatever it is that got you in a situation where all you can do is cope, then learn from that. And once you've done that, then you can thrive. To me, it really resonated when you say that, and you could look on my paper here if you could read it. But I did write that down, cope, learn, thrive, because it really resonated as a simple way to think about. It's almost a problem-solving tool. It's almost the way I looked at it anyways. That's what I got from it. I'd love to hear your take.
That really does kind of like make my heart sing a little bit, because like I said, that is exactly what we're doing. It's like we're trying to reach people that are kind of like going through the worst parts of life, that are just like really barely making it. And so it's like the very first thing, you're not going to start teaching them when they're in a place where they're like, I'm just trying to make it day to day. They're not going to be open to learning. So it's like, first you have to help them to actually survive, to deal with what it is they're going through. And that's where the coping comes in. So we're literally coming to you at ground zero, helping you to cope with ground zero. Then we're teaching you how to get out of that so that you can thrive. It's literally just the simple process. And rather than saying like a bunch of words, this is, and I do have my spiel where I go and I say, we help you to cope with the stresses that life throws at you. And then we help you to learn and, do all this. So you can, like, I say all of that when I'm like out speaking and things like that. But it really just is the simple process of what we're going to help you do at 57 Northampton. We're going to help you to cope. You're going to learn, and so that you can thrive. That's really what it is. So yeah, I'm really glad that comes across.
And if I can say one more thing about what you just said, we're going to help you cope. We're going to help you learn so that you can thrive. Q, the messenger, was making a video earlier where he talked about self-reliance. And, that old saw about pick yourself up by the bootstraps first requires boots and straps. So, that's certainly not where I'm going. But if you give someone the tools to cope and then learn, it's up to them whether they thrive.
Yes.
You cannot make somebody thrive. You can't teach somebody how to thrive. You can give them the tools whereby they can learn to do that for themselves. And I think that the way you put that, sometimes when we think of charity, we think about a handout. It sounds to me like what you're describing is a hand up, if that makes sense.
Yes, that exactly. It's literally, we're giving you the tools. If you choose to thrive, like, you can thrive if you choose to. But we can give you the tools and you can not use them at all. That's up to you. But we're giving you everything that you need so that you can thrive. It is possible in the environment that we're creating, but it's really up to you. Yeah.
That's very powerful. I looked through your socials a little bit. I looked through Instagram, and I'll pull out a couple.
Oh, God.
I just wrote down a couple of little things.
Lord.
I just post or whatever, but a couple of them made sense to me.
Okay.
All right, so we mentioned that I'm a diabetic, and blood sugar affects a lot of things, including mood. You don't want to know me when my blood sugar's real low. I've learned to cope with it, cope,
There it is.
and learn how not to be there and then thrive in the future so I don't go into those places. But I mean, I love that. I'm going to use that a lot. I'm going to refer to it. But as a diabetic, my blood sugar affects my mood. I could be mad because you're wearing a Brixton Supply hat, Q. I don't need to have a reason. I'm just mad, and I'm going to take it on who's ever around me, and I've had to learn to deal with that. 80% of arguments happen because someone hasn't eaten yet. That was a post on your Instagram. Think about how many times do we all get hangry.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
That's a fact. 80% of arguments happen because someone hasn't eaten yet. Just stop and have a sandwich. Look, here's a couple M&Ms, whatever it takes,
I'll be honest. I don't know if that is an actual fact. That was something, I think I posted that on Thanksgiving, and it was part of like a kind of a push we were doing, because on Thanksgiving, a lot of people, it's like, you're with family and family gets chatty. They feel like they can say whatever. Why are you eating all that? Haven't you already had a plate? You shouldn't, and it just turns into a really, what could be this beautiful, amazing day with family and friends just turns into this self-critical, depressing, self-hating kind of experience. And so it really, I don't remember, I think we posted that maybe like first thing in the morning, and we were just like, that whole day was us encouraging people like, eat your food, you know what I mean? And that was just kind of what I think we posted a series of like little funny quotes and things like that, just kind of poking light at the situation. But the entire push was like, eat something. Like, this is National Cheat Day. You know what I mean? Like, don't worry about your weight. Like, it's, you know what I mean? Like, you can do things in moderation. And today, like, you can pig out, eat what you want, have fun, enjoy your family, like, be around people that make you feel good, take up space, you know? So that's part of what that was for, was really just, I think the next one, I'm not exactly sure, because I think we posted that on Thanksgiving, but I think the next post was literally just eat. I think it was just giant letters, eat. And then that was...
I saw a couple of food-related ones. All right.
I'm very hungry. I'm a very hungry person.
I'm going to throw out another one.
Okay.
This one's going to be deeper.
Oh, God.
Why don't you feel safe enough to lean on others?
Oh, mm-hmm.
Why don't you feel safe enough to lean on others?
Mm-hmm.
Can I answer that? Please. I'm going to say because of vulnerability, especially for men. Mm-hmm. We do not like to be vulnerable, especially around other men. And then with that, I mean, it engulfs all aspects of our lives. Like, I don't even like to be vulnerable around my wife. And we've been married almost 18 years.
Wow.
And I still find it hard to let my guard down. Oh, babe, my back hurting today. I don't think I can do that. You know, just say something simple like that. I'm in pain. I don't even want to tell her those type of things. I just kind of bear it and go through it, you know. But I don't know why. Do you feel that way, Shane? Or am I just speaking for myself?
No, you're definitely speaking for me. I wrote that down because it resonates with me personally, you know. There's a story that's been told on the podcast, Janna, and I'll catch you up to it. But back in November, I blew a van up on the side of the road. I destroyed a van on the way to Birmingham. I was down in Warrior, Alabama, which is a little drive from here, if you know where it is, south of Coleman. And I didn't even think to call my friend Q, who has a tow dolly and a diesel truck, could have pulled me home. Instead, I paid $400-something for a tow truck. And it never even occurred to me to call him. Like, I'm sure he, I'll be down there in a minute. You know, it'll be no big deal. But it wasn't even that I wasn't ashamed to ask for help. It never occurred to me to ask for help. It never occurred, Yeah, sometimes we feel that way, ashamed, but sometimes it's like, it's not even an option. It's never considered, never crossed your mind. Thank you. Wow. What say you, Janna?
I say, first of all, I appreciate that vulnerability, because even just sharing that, like, to have the level of awareness to say, like, sometimes I feel this way, sometimes I need help, and I don't even think to reach out is vulnerability. And so it is possible, you know what I mean? And so I really appreciate you guys sharing that. I also, I have heard people say, I don't reach out for help because it's a sign of weakness. I don't want people to use it against me later and that kind of thing. I don't think that I have heard, or maybe I just am not recalling, but I never even thought about it as an option is, like, wild to me, and it kind of, I don't know how deep we can get in the podcast, but it almost makes me want to go back and ask, like, about your, even your childhoods, and, like, what was your first experience with asking someone for help or needing help? Like, how did that go? What kind of formulated it in yourself that I have to be all things to myself and to other people? Because I imagine you guys are there when other people reach out to you. I imagine that you guys are giving of yourselves in that way when people are vulnerable with you. And so it really makes me curious as to where that, like, extreme self-reliance came from. I mean, I have an idea, but it's like, just like your personal stories. I'm curious.
I mean, yeah, that's a lot to unpack. Although there are very few things that we won't. There are a few subjects that won't be broached on the podcast, but probably nothing we would have to say no to. We just wouldn't let it come up.
Yeah.
But I'll say, on an overall, I don't think Q and I are different than most men, especially of a certain generation. I'm older than everybody in the room by a few years. But generalizing, even today, generally speaking, young boys are told, shake it off. You'll be all right. Rub some dirt in it. It'll be fine. Are you crying? Are you serious? You crying? There's people around here. I mean, it's okay to cry, but only in the bathroom. And then go take a shower so nobody, you know what I'm saying? And boys are raised that it's our responsibility to make sure that we provide. Think about a traditional wedding service, for instance. The woman will be told how she's got to love and cherish and take her, and the man is told, you better pay the bills. You better bring food home, And traditionally, from the beginning of civilization, it's been the man's responsibility to, leave the cave, kill something, and drag it back so his family can eat. And I think some of those, whatever a culture has been impressed, what's the word I'm looking for? Whatever happens to a culture, certain values and beliefs, cultural norms. Thank you, Q. Cultural norms come about that may be antiquated and they may not fit, but it's hard to take those things out of your cultural history. You can see that in a lot of different things, whether it's race, whether it's gender, whether it's, and in this case, it's gender. Men are supposed to suck it up. You ain't tired. You could be tired when you're dead. You ain't got time for that now. Drag it home. Make sure your family gets fed at all costs. And I think that's part of the reason why men traditionally live less time than women do, because we're expected to use ourselves up early. In this day and age, we don't do that physically as much, and so I think maybe it's changing some.
I
That was long-winded. Sorry.
Oh, you good, Shane. Go ahead.
No, I was saying, like, I think my brain took a temporary leave of absence because I'm like, no, yeah, that's absolutely duh. Of course, that's how, like, I have a brother, my dad, my uncles, like, my husband, I know how this goes, It's interesting. I was, have you guys watched Bill Burr's latest stand-up? What is he called? The Drop Dead Years? It just came out on Hulu.
I haven't seen his most recent one. No, I don't have Hulu, so yeah.
Yeah, no, it was very interesting. Just thinking about the correlation, he made a joke. The reason he calls it the Drop Dead Years is because he was saying that men are allowed to have two modes. You're allowed to be mad and you're allowed to be fine. You know what I mean? Other than that, he's like, you can't, there's nothing else that you can experience. So he was saying, like, men do feel sentimental, they feel emotional, they feel betrayed, they feel all of these other emotions, but he said all of this is lumped into a bag called gay, and he's like, and it's funny, like, I'm watching with my husband and we're laughing, and I'm also like, damn, like, because I know this, you know what I mean? But I'm like, that is really, really unfortunate. And, he kind of concluded his spiel with saying, like, so you go from fine to mad and you kind of oscillate between the two. And then when you're between, I think he said like 50 to like 65 or something, you'll just clutch your chest and like kill over and die.
Just die. Yep.
Yeah. And he was like, it doesn't happen to women because we feel our emotions. You know what I mean? He's like, you got all of this pent up emotion. And of course he's saying it in this comedic way, but it's like, that is really accurate. That's insane, and it's funny. I do know the struggle from a logical standpoint. You know what I mean? But obviously I'm a woman.
The struggle between men and women, the way we view things and how we're culturally raised. Is that what you're saying?
No,
the struggle? Yeah,
well, I'm saying I know, like, logically. Logically, I've been told, like, this is what it is, and this is, like, what, we're not allowed to be weak or things like that, So I understand it from a logical perspective. Obviously, I don't have that emotional connection to that, but, yeah, it is, patriarchy is...
Right.
It's beating everybody ass. And y'all are not exempt.
So I always got to give the counterpoint. I'll take the tough position sometimes.
Okay.
So we do talk a lot about the negatives of the patriarchy, and certainly that's true to a point.
Mm-hmm.
To a point. There's also the fact that traditionally men have been the breadwinners, and we have been the ones that have provided the financial support. All the other kind of support is up to y'all. We got one job, make the money. And I think traditionally some of the attitude has been that, well, I made the money, so it's my money to decide how it gets, it's not our money. It's not, I think sometimes the attitude of the patriarchy has been
Uh-oh. Are we still? I hear myself.
You could, but there it is. What? Did I am bad to play with the mic. Hang on. Maybe. Check. I guess it's fine now.
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought, but I think I was off on a rant there. But I do think that in old olden times, in olden times, that patriarchal sense of organization probably helped when we were, fighting savages or not even fighting savages. That's probably a bad idea because we probably started most of that shit. But when somebody had to go kill something and drag it back to the cave, almost literally, when survival meant, 14-hour days on the farm doing back-breaking labor, well, somebody had to be in the farmhouse. Otherwise, why are you out there in the first place, right? Somebody has to be in the farmhouse taking care of food, the kids, whatever it may be. And I think that I think we're getting to the point now where we almost don't recognize the value of that. Does that make sense? I think I'm rambling a little bit. I don't think I'm making my point very well. No, go ahead.
Gender roles is what you're speaking on.
I am, and I think they're changing
like
to a point.
So are you saying you prefer the way it used to be, or you like the way it's going?
Oh, I like the way. I think I like the way we're going. For sure. Yeah. No, two are always better than one. And if you're going to be successful, like women are better at some things than men, and men are better at some things than women. And when you put two people together that are focused on the same goal, you become unstoppable.
I agree. I think. I'm sorry. Did I?
No. You go ahead.
Get
it where you fit in.
I feel like where gender roles and mental health intersect, I feel like, well, it's not an I feel like it. The fact is, we're raising human beings to be a man or a woman. You know what I mean? Like, you behave, this is how men stereotypically behave. You behave like that. This is how women stereotypically behave like that. You know what I mean? Instead of teaching people how to be human, And so I think that women are taught that women are supposed to be emotional caregivers. We're supposed to be in touch. We're supposed to be compassionate and of course, take care of the house, watch the kids, all of that kind of domestic and emotional stuff. You know what I mean? Nurturing. Men, right. We're just told that women are supposed to be nurturers. Men are told they're supposed to be providers. And so it's like, go out, you're supposed to be hardworking. You're supposed to not feel pain. You're supposed to not, show emotion, that kind of thing. And what does that do? It cuts off very important parts of your humanity by stuffing you into the man box. Right. And so I think that this is kind of it's a really big issue. And so you have both men and women that are struggling with their mental health, not able to necessarily give themselves the support that they need. For instance, women aren't, there's a lot of pushback when they set boundaries and when they say no, and when they're like, I can't do this or I won't do this. You know what I mean? Men get a lot of pushback when they say, I am struggling. I need to cry. I'm sad. I feel betrayed. I need somebody to tow my car from Warrior back to Huntsville. You know what I mean? And so there's a lot of damage. There's a lot of overcompensating that we're doing, trying to maintain the roles when all we really should be doing is being human. You understand what I'm saying? And yeah, I think it's really, really unfortunate. So yeah, like right now, I think that's probably like a huge struggle right now. There's a huge divide, and I think that is maybe the crux of it.
Now, with that being said, what percentage of men make up the people that y'all see or help?
Not that many. If I had to ballpark it, if I had to just ballpark it, maybe 20%.
Wow.
And we are really.
I can see that. Sure. Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
I'm not surprised by that number.
We are working our asses off, trying to bring in more men and let men know, like, hey, we're here for you, and male therapists doing events with male partners and things like that, male centric things. But I'm like, it's like you said, we can give you the tools to cope and learn, but it's up to you. If you're gonna use the tools, if you're gonna use them to your advantage, it's up to you. There's only so much that we can do.
If you're even gonna ask for help.
Yeah.
I have a thought on that issue.
Okay.
This is a way to try to illustrate it. Why do girls a lot of times do better in school than boys academically? We know that's true, especially in the younger grades. And I've seen some, like I'm no doctor, researcher, or whatever. I'm just using my opinion based on what I've heard. But I've heard the theory that some of that is because young boys are not really meant to sit in one place for 6 or 7 or 8 hours. Probably young kids in general, but especially young boys are better at learning when they're active, when they're physically doing something. And if you think about what brings men together as men, usually, what do? We go play some basketball. We go play golf. We shoot some pool. We go drinking. One way or another, we do something. We work on a car, but we have some kind of an activity. We don't bond sitting over a cup of tea. Generally speaking, we don't meet at the coffee shop, although we do. But I think a lot of times when it comes to men, you sit down, you say, well, let's sit down and talk about your mental health. Man, please, come on, man. But you'll be a lot more likely, I think, to get a man to open up if you approach it in a way of, in a different way maybe. I'm not sure what the right way would be. But I think that a lot of times you invite a man to sit down and talk about, what's bothering you or what's going on. Well, I'm not going to sit down, especially somebody I don't really know. I'm not going to tell a stranger. I've opened up more about things on this podcast that I haven't told anybody. And as a result, it's also made me more open, especially in my conversations with Q and Kevin, because I'm kind of a guarded person. But the ability to sit down certainly helps. But even with this, we're not just sitting down and talking about our feelings. We're making a podcast.
Right.
We're doing something. We're trying to be productive and useful. And I think if anything else, men inherently feel a need to be useful. Does that make sense? And so we find something to do and we bond over that.
I can see that. I would be I can't answer, the question from an expert point of view as to why girls do better in school. I have no expertise in that, although me, I will go research it. I'll have the answer tomorrow. But I think that I would, I think about the kind of generalization of men bonding over physical activities and not necessarily their feelings and things like that. And once again, it takes me back to how much of this is socialized and how much of this is actually nature. I wonder what men would be like if there wasn't a ton of societal pressure that tells you you're supposed to shoot pool, you're supposed to, connect over drinking beers, and you know what I mean? I just wonder what that would look like. I think that there are a lot of men that would appreciate being able to stop and cry and talk about how they're feeling and actually get a hug and not be told that, oh, you're weak or that's gay or anything. You know what I mean? But I feel like there's just a ton of pressure that, we're not necessarily accounting for. I even think about sometimes, like, I can't help it. I giggle every time I go to the store and I see, like body wash and then body wash for men. You know what I mean? There's toothpaste and then man toothpaste. I'm like, y'all got different teeth. Like, what?
But the same thing could be said in the reverse.
Mm-hmm.
Why is there body, why aren't women using the same as, I guess that don't make any sense. Does it?
Where you going with it?
Nah, it doesn't make any sense.
You can finish the thought, yeah.
But women probably don't choose to use the men body wash any more than men choose the women's body wash. And so back to your point, is that because culturally we've been pigeonholed into these roles, or that's the old nature versus nurture question. And I would posit that it's both. I do think some of these things are natural, but some of those differences are natural, but they're not. It's not all encompassing. And when we say, well, this is the only thing that a man is, Q and I are both very domestic people. Q, what do you do? I don't know you from Adam. I just met you on the street. What do you do, Q? It's nice to meet you.
I'm a stay-at-home dad.
There you go. And no shame in that.
Right.
Actually pride in that. But I think a lot of men would, sometimes men probably look at you funny, like they're like what you do? Yeah, I change diapers. Yeah, I got little kids. I do everything. Women look at me funny sometimes because I'm pretty good with babies and I'm pretty domesticated too. I don't know if I'd call myself a stay-at-home dad, but it would fit because I stay at home and I'm a dad. So, there you go.
Yeah.
But by and large, I think men are often more satisfied when they are accomplishing something, accomplishing a goal. I think we're more goal-oriented, and I think women, of course, like I said, I'm what do I know? But I think women often feel more satisfaction in how would you put it? So maybe the softer skills. That's probably not the right term to use, but I think we often call interpersonal skills, like in business, we would call those the soft skills. You know, and I think that women are often judge their satisfaction by how much did you love? What's that song? How Did You Love? By Avenged Sevenfold, I think.
I guess I'll have to take your word for that.
Oh man, what's the lyrics to that? Never mind, I can't quote it quick, so I ain't gonna try and do it. But you know, I do think some of those things are natural, and I think we enhance them with our culture. We take it to the extreme sometimes with culture. Well, no man can be a true man if he's a stay-at-home dad. Well, I mean, I know one, at least one.
Yeah. I will say, like, from I guess me being the resident woman in this room right now, you know, I am also extremely goal oriented. I would almost say, and men and women in my life have told me this almost more than any man or woman they know. You know what I mean? Like, very driven, very much like, I have to get this done in this way. It has to look like this, like very kind of like a dog with a bone with certain things. I also do take pride in interpersonal, like, you know, relationships and those soft skills and those kinds of things. But I think it's very interesting. And I'm just kind of talking, and these ideas are coming to you as they're coming to me, which is very scary for me, because yes, I'm an internal processor, and right now I'm processing externally, so I'm not very, you know. But I will say that a lot of my soft skills are based on tense and stressful situations from growing up. I've learned to navigate certain situations. I've had to learn to, for instance, I wouldn't call myself an empath, but I am a highly sensitive person because I had to be that way for survival in a lot of situations. I had to know, okay, that means that they're angry. Okay, that means I should not go over there. That means that, okay, maybe now is a good time. You know what I mean? And so those skills were I would say more nurtured into me. The goal seeking, the relentlessness, the, you know, workaholic aspects of me, not necessarily nurtured into me in the same way. I would say that those are more so nature for me, you know? And I'm just saying, like, I'm one woman, you know? But that's one of the reasons. My own experience is what made me question the roles, because I'm like, I'm a woman and I don't resonate with, you know, that I'm the soft one and I'm the, you know, I'm the well-spoken one. Like, I'm in a tense situation, I'm bringing Julian out, like my husband. You know what I mean? Like, that man, he knows how to calm it down. He knows how to talk to people. He's extremely empathic, so he knows exactly, like, you know, he can almost feel what you're feeling when you're feeling it. You know what I mean? I'm bringing him out. I am gasoline on a fire. So, we have seen it happen enough times.
Explain the empath.
So Julian, it's basically being able to sense other people's emotions and feel them as your own. So you walk in a room, somebody's angry, you feel angry even though it's not your anger. Okay. Yeah. That's very, very, I used to think that I was an empath until I met Julian. And then I was like, oh, I'm not that at all. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He can genuinely, like, walk in, feel a situation, and that's what makes him so good with people. It makes him very persuasive because he can just feel the situation, where I go in and I'm just like, you know.
Is that a learned skill, or that's something?
No, that I think that's more yeah. I think that is more nature. Mm-hmm. Yeah, whereas being a highly sensitive person is nurture.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I had a couple of points, but I think you made them really well. The one thing that I would ask about, not question, but the one question I guess that I have is when you talk about the way that you came up and you had to learn some of these quote unquote soft skills. I don't like that term necessarily, but we all know what we're talking about. You know, being empathetic or feeling other people's feelings does not make one soft. I want to point, you know, that's not what I mean in any way at all. It does not make one soft. First of all, and second of all, sometimes soft is the only way to survive.
It is. Mm-hmm.
If you jump from a building, you want to land on something soft, right? Mm-hmm. But I wonder, going back to your comments, how much of those quote unquote soft skills have to be learned by women because of the generally smaller physical stature. In other words, if you're a 16-year-old boy and you weigh 180 pounds and you bench press 200 and you play on the football team or whatever, you can get through some situations just by the sheer strength of your physical self, your muscles or whatever it may be. Whereas I think more often women are less physically imposing, and therefore they have to learn an intellectual way around the circumstance rather than just the, bull in the china shop approach that, so many times we take as young men. What do you think about that?
Like about the fact that is the case, or
I guess the question would be, do you think that women often have to learn those interpersonal skills because, or maybe they learn them better than boys because boys sometimes use their physical ability to just, bull through a situation rather than, for instance, if somebody's angry and you're 18 years old and 220 and bench press 200 or whatever, I mean, what can they do? They can yell at you, but they can't really do anything. Whereas, if you're 5'5" and 140 or whatever at 18, you know what I'm saying? You're less likely to be able to, you might want to find a peaceful resolution to it rather than just saying, all right, well, let's get it on. Or am I, I don't know if that's even, it just came to my head.
Yeah, no,
I don't know.
That's
necessity is the mother of invention.
I would say to that, Shane, like I kind of agree with you. When you're a young strapping bull, you don't gotta be soft, in the situation. But now that I'm 40, I'm an older man. I'm learning my soft skills. Like I would rather diffuse a fight than get into a fight. Even if the dude stepped on my shoe, whatever. Hey man, it's all good. Let me buy you a beer. Yeah. Just showing some maturity. To a girl's point of view, I don't know. But from a man's point of view, as I age, I'm not trying to fight no one. I done been punched in the face before. I don't want to ever get punched in the face again.
And I don't want to punch somebody else.
It hurts your knuckles. I done punched somebody in the face and it hurts. It hurts getting punched or punching. So to a girl's point of view, you would see that they would maybe try to learn to diffuse a situation or talk their way out of a situation as opposed to getting physical.
It's interesting to me. And once again, like I'm processing right now, but I think it's interesting that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost being presented as though like, physical intimidation is the first option, but if you can't do that, then it's good to learn how to like negotiate and use the soft skills.
I was talking two different time frames in life. Like when I was younger, when I was 18 years old, I would more than likely get into that fight as opposed to saying I'm sorry.
Yeah.
As a 40-year-old man, I'm saying I'm sorry. Let me buy you a beer, whatever the situation may be, to avoid the fight with maturity.
I think I find that interesting because in situations like that, like if you were to look at a situation and you're like, okay, there's an altercation. Which one would you rather your children learn? Would you rather your children learn, okay, like this guy stepped on your foot, punch him in the face, or this guy stepped on your foot, let's consider like, did he do it on purpose? Like, how hurt are you like that? And kind of this is the way that we would prefer, and go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
And I'm saying like, I think that in some cases that brawn has almost been used to like circumvent that emotional maturity.
Absolutely. I think that's exactly, I think you've distilled what we've both trying to say I think so.
Yeah.
But let me also say this. I want my son to take the diplomatic approach the first time, the second time, and the third time. But if the other dude punches him, I want him to know how to raise hell. So, to say that it's never you don't learn how to punch somebody in the face until you've punched somebody in the face. And you don't learn how to take a punch if you've never been punched in the face. And when it comes down to it, we're all animals. And there's nowhere in the animal community that the males do not fight. Name me an animal where in that animal community the males don't fight, whether it's rats, whether it's monkeys, who we probably came from, whether it's giraffes. You ever seen giraffes fight with those big old long necks? They hitting each other with them, but it looks wicked. But the point is, as male animals on this globe, there comes a point in time when somebody's got to throw down, and that's our responsibility. Now, I'm 53. I'm not, I'm out of the game. That's going to be the 30-year-olds, but somebody has to be able to fight, if for no other reason than no matter how enlightened we become, there's another tribe next to us that's probably not quite as enlightened as we are, and they want to take our stuff. And I think if you add to that, we're in a place of unprecedented riches in the world.
Okay.
Everybody's got food. We don't really have to fight for it anymore. But when the shit hits the fan, as it always does, when the cycle comes back around, somebody's going to have to stand up and fight. I don't want that to be the first option, but I want and it's going to be the men, and I want our men to be prepared to be able to do that if it becomes necessary.
So
Go ahead. Get in there. Yeah, get in there.
no. So I'm definitely, I'm hearing this, and I'm hearing you. But once again, I don't think my pushback is like, being ready to fight and if something goes down and that kind of thing. I think it really is that this is a man's job.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. Fighting is not a man's job. Brawn and it really is like, find your humanity and find your role in humanity, your specific role. I'm looking at somebody like maybe Muhammad Ali, who was a gifted boxer, you know what I mean? And we can say that was his calling, like that's what he was put here to do, you know what I mean? Traditional man, Then you look at somebody like maybe Martin Luther King or Langston Hughes, you know what I mean? Langston Hughes is a poet. Martin Luther King was, he spoke to people and he was there to calm tensions, and he could read a room and knew how to speak to people. And it's like, both of these were men. Both of these were great men, but they found their specific role. They found their specific role in humanity. It wasn't rooted as far as I mean, everybody has their, their manhood, but it wasn't rooted in being a man and saying, I have to be strong, I have to fight. It was, this is what I was placed here to do. Okay. And okay, so I'm placed here to lead this movement. I'm placed here to write poetry. I'm placed here to box. And so it's like, it's more than saying, because I'm a man, this is how I'm going to behave. This is how I'm going to, mold myself into being. But it's, because I'm Shane, this is what I'm going to do. You know what I mean? This is, and it brings me back to being able to feel yourself, being able to feel your emotions, being able to connect with who you are, as opposed to, this is what society is trying to force me to be, And I think that is much more important than being kind of pigeonholed into this role. You understand what I'm saying?
I understand totally what you're saying.
Yeah.
Just to make a point, it's amazing that we just got on basically Battle of the Sexes or
immediately
explaining like gender roles. And with that being said, society been going on for hundreds of years. Do you see it changing? The way we structure our roles as far as gender goes. I know me and Shane, we come from a different time than it is now. Like I'm a millennial, early on millennial. You are what, Gen Xer, which we blur the lines real close. Yeah. But then you start looking at the Gen Alphas and whatever the Gen Zers. I think they might have a better understanding of not just being placed in the masculine role or a feminine role. They kind of blur the lines a little bit better than what we did. And as long as we here, I think it's going to be the way it is. We're still the people in charge of how society's ran. So it's going to be years before you might see those gender roles really start to take hold and become norms, the way that we're discussing, like where you're not just a man, you're not just a woman, you're a human being first. You don't have to do X, Y, Z because of this or because of your gender or what you're born with.
I think you're right as far as attitudes and cultural norms are changing. And I think the biggest reason for that is because we're transitioning from a physical society to an intellectual society. I think at some point in time, our physical bodies won't even matter. They'll be irrelevant. And probably the natural evolution of humans is that we eventually shed these physical bodies and we're we exist in some sort of a digital state. That's getting pretty wild and ethereal. We'll go into our conspiracy theories here. But I think that some of those roles came to play because of our physical differences. When it was important for somebody to stand on the gate and, pull the bow back and let the arrow go, a man can generally pull a heavier bow, which means more, whatever it may be. Physically, we were more dominating. And as we go from a society that's less and less physical and more intellectual, I think those roles are going to kind of smooth themselves out more naturally. If I think gender will be less important. Now, whether or not that's a good thing, people will debate. But the only change is change. We don't want society to stay the same as it ever has. And, how much better will we be when we can interface with each other on a completely intellectual level? Wow, that's a long discussion on gender roles.
It is.
I'm here for it.
But I think these things are important. We've talked a lot about this on this podcast. More conversation is what's needed about any controversial issue. Mm-hmm. The more we talk about it, the more we try to understand, where we're coming from, the more we can find a common ground, I think.
I agree. It's communication. Like that said, instead of just going in with just, my blanket generalization of a group of people or whatever it is, like just come to the table, have a talk about it. I think that is super important. Yeah.
I was listening to Chris Williamson talking to Joe Rogan. You just said, you alluded to come into a conversation with an open mind. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to try and use your words, but, instead of having a predisposed idea, have that conversation and then make up your mind. This is a quote I wrote down that I heard from that podcast. Okay. Some people think that they're thinking, but what they're really doing is rearranging their prejudices. Prejudices get moved around to come up with the desired outcome. That was a paraphrase. But how often do we come into something, even a conversation with a predetermined idea? Mm-hmm. I believe this. Mm-hmm. This is how I see it. And rather than having a conversation to find out what the other person thinks and whether or not, where the truth really lies or getting closer to it, we go into a conversation trying to prove our own point. You can find an internet quote or a statistic or something to prove any point in the world that you want to make. You can argue with yourself if you want to. Mm-hmm. But if you come into these conversations with the idea that, let me find out what this person thinks, and then maybe they're wrong, maybe they're not. Either way, let's debate it in a way that we can still, be friends afterwards.
I love that you... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was saying, I love that you wrote that down. It's crazy because I'm like, it's almost like it's predicted the conversation. Like, I don't know how you knew we'd end up there, you know what I mean? But it's interesting. I was texting my cousin not long ago, and her and her dad, they are on just... ideologies are just worlds apart. And she was talking to me about I'm kind of at my wit's end. I don't know how much longer I can, deal with that. And so it kind of forced me to do some research. And this research is fairly new to me. And so I would much rather read what I said than to kind of than to try to paraphrase it. But it was basically confirmation bias. And I'm trying to read through it really quick to make sure there's no personal identifiable information in here. Okay. So I said political views seem to be rooted in identity. And when someone's sense of identity is threatened, it triggers fight or flight. Fight or flight is controlled by the amygdala. This actually sends a surge of energy to the extremities and away from the brain. This makes it hard to be logical. And so the primary focus isn't understanding or truth, but defending their idea, aka their political stance. And I thought that was super interesting. She had been talking to me about some of the issues that she'd been having for years. And it was at a breaking point because there was a death in the family. And the topic of conversation was just everything controversial. It wasn't like healing or I'm here for you or anything. It was just nothing but divisive. And but reading that and realizing that a lot of the stances that we have, a lot of the prejudices that we have, we are not objective about them. We can't just observe them as separate from us. We internalize them and make them a part of ourselves, and that is the problem. When it becomes a part of us, it's so much harder to unroot and to examine, because it's right here. You know what I mean? I can't read what my shirt says. Y'all can read it because it's subjective to you, but it's on me, you know? And so I think that is probably one of the biggest issues, is taking a lot of these ideas and you know, perspectives that we don't have a lot of experience about. There are things that we've heard about, but we don't have lived experience. We don't have like a real connection, but we form these opinions and then we root them in ourselves where they can't be easily unrooted. I thought it was very interesting that when that mindset, when a certain opinion is questioned, it doesn't go to like, oh, this is a different opinion than mine. Let me see what that's about. It goes to, this is an attack on my identity. Right. The amygdala, I read, that's fight or flight.
I'm sorry, the amygdala is part of the brain?
Yes.
Pardon me for, yeah.
Yes,
okay.
I'm sorry, yes.
No, it's okay. I wasn't sure. Amygdala?
Amygdala.
Yeah, I didn't know. Yeah, you got me. Yeah.
The amygdala.
I didn't know that word. Uh-oh. I'm going to have to do some studying. Oh, Shane don't know amygdala. I can't even say it now.
Amygdala. Yeah, and it is
so
where, go ahead.
How do we fix that? How do we change that? I've got some ideas, but I want to hear what you have to say.
So I think I addressed that in the text.
Look here.
But I would say, let me see what okay, so I was talking to her about how to speak to her dad after that. So I think I did talk about how to unroot it in ourselves. So what I said was, the more politicized things become, the more polarized we become as a society, and we're all more at risk of that confirmation bias. So the way around this is to find a way to deliver truth without triggering the fight or flight. This means asking questions, finding common ground, and then building from there. Even having pleasant conversations about something else to establish trust. This can help basically to kind of, you know, treat that person like a kindergartner. You're not going to go in and say, you know, oh my God, this is why you need to wipe your ass. You know what I mean? Like, you're sorry. That's
quite. No worries. No worries.
I'm sorry. But it's like, you know, you're gonna, you know, maybe you show them like on Sesame Street, like, you know, or something like that, to kind of, you know, show them on a doll, like, you know, and just kind of show them, you know, baby steps to gain their trust and to kind of show them in these non-confrontational ways. With us, when, you know, to try to avoid that confirmation bias in ourselves, which we all have, by the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding. Everybody has their bias of some kind. We all do. But especially with this knowledge, it's really important for us to consistently be questioning our own points of view. Always. Like, never get too comfortable believing what you believe hard and fast. Like, always be questioning, always be studying, always be researching. You know, listen to different opinions, that kind of thing. You don't have to agree, but if you're just shutting them out and shutting them down without listening at all, you don't have a shot at gaining a different perspective. You don't have a shot at getting out of your own way. And so that's what I would say is, like, continue to question, be a learner, like continue to learn. One of the things I actually had to, it was a couple of years ago, I actually had to, there was a bit of an unraveling with me, I would say, in my personal life, which was actually a good thing, because that unraveling gave me enough space to question some things that kind of, I realized, like, there are some things that are really holding me back because I was so attached to these things. And so being able to unravel it and to kind of like make space for a different opinion or a different way really does help.
That's good. I would say with the confirmation bias, as far as willing to change and willing to accept a different opinion, sometimes people get pigeonholed by the people that's around them or who they surround themselves with. Like, it could be your family. I'm around my family all the time, and my family view things a certain way. It's hard to even consider another way until you get away from that family. I say one thing that helped me grow was moving away, getting away. That's one thing that really helped me grow. Real. And then as I matured, I started to realize there's other options. This is not the only option. This is not the only choice. You know, so whoever's out there listening that's stuck in maybe some biases that they know are wrong, but they can't get away from them. Maybe they have to get themselves away, remove themselves from that position or the people you're around. Change your group, you know?
Yeah. I agree with that 100%. For those, like, if you have the resources, the resources, the ability to change. And I've heard that so many times. Me, myself, I'm from Milwaukee. I'm all the way over here. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you do have to just completely change the circle.
Yep.
For those that don't have that option to just completely get away, I would say even in those environments, still try to reach out to other people that, you know, do have opposing viewpoints. Even if you're coming home to this, you know, this is what we think in this house, you know what I mean? Still take it on yourself to, like, reach out, seek out other groups, seek out other people with different perspectives and different lifestyles, and try to still find those, like, try to continue to challenge yourself. You know, a lot of times people that you know, they're living in the house, that kind of thing, sometimes they don't even realize that what that they're thinking is, they don't even realize it's a confirmation bias. They don't realize that. Yeah. But if you are fortunate enough to be aware, then yes, absolutely seek out some different perspectives. Read. We are, like, I mean, the age of the internet, information is out there.
You can learn anything.
Yes. Continue to learn, continue to challenge.
I think some responsibility fall on parents too, especially with younger people, because we don't teach our kids the question, to ask why. That's one thing I'm trying to do better at as a father. You know, I got my older kids and I got these younger kids. I want them to be very inquisitive. Like, why do we do this?
Yes.
Ask me why. I won't get offended. I know growing up for me, I got smacked upside the head if I asked why. That was one thing that happened.
Yeah.
Why? Because I said so.
Exactly.
You get a fire across your lips, you know. But I want you to ask me why, so I can explain to you why.
Yes.
And if you got another way or a better understanding, which sometimes kids might, why are you doing it that way when we could just do this way?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even see
Thank you
it.
for that. Right.
Thank you.
A different perspective.
I didn't even see
you know?
that, son. Thanks.
Yeah.
You know, so I think as parents, we have to allow our kids to critically think and question things.
A word. Yeah.
The freedom to question things, you know, if you think about it, that's what free speech is all about. You know, that this country was founded on the ideals of you can speak your mind and I can speak my mind, and we'll lay them both on the table and we'll see which one works. Maybe a combination of the two. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm right. Whatever. But let's examine all possibilities. I was going to tell an interesting story, and then I'm going to ask you to close us out. I loved what you said about I don't want to use your words or try to, but it's something along the lines of exposing yourself to people who think differently than you do, who have different ideas than you do, who maybe live their life a little bit differently than you do. So let me set the stage for you.
Okay.
I'm in South Beach, Miami, one of my very favorite places to be. My wife and I love South Beach, Miami. Shout out, Mitch Novick. Can't wait to see you, brother. So you ever heard of Hallover Beach?
No.
Hallover Beach is in North Miami Beach, and it is the nation's only, to my knowledge, the nation's only fully legal integrated nude beach. Cops patrolling, lifeguards out there, hot dog stands, and you can wear whatever you want to, including absolutely nothing.
Wow.
Completely sanctioned by the city, like not, you know, some underground thing. You just come out there. All ages welcome. Anybody can be there, from grandma to grandbaby and everything in between. You see a cross-section of the whole world there, okay? My wife and I are at Hallover Beach, because why not, right?
Yeah. YOLO,
So
you know.
you only live once, right? And you do learn a few things that way. One of the things you learn is it's not really any different than being on a regular beach. You ain't covering much up anyways, and that little extra is not really
It's
most
not
of the
really
time.
doing anything.
And you probably don't want to see that anyways. You're probably like, dang, let me put a shirt on. So I'm at the beach. My wife, we're laying there, and I said, baby, I'm going to walk down the beach a little ways, right? I go to walking down the beach. And now keep in mind, I grew up in a very traditional religious family. You didn't even say the word gay. You had to use a slur, okay?
Wow.
So I'm walking down the beach, and all of a sudden I realize it's nothing but a bunch of dudes here. It's not a woman out here. I was kind of hoping to see a couple of ladies, right? Ain't no ladies. And then I look a little bit more, and I realize the whole area that I'm walking through has rainbow flags in the sand, like in a, you know, 20 or 30 yard, area. And I realized I've walked right into the, I guess, unofficial gay area, and I'm walking right straight through it. It ain't nothing but dudes. Here I am standing by myself, got not a stitch on, neither does anybody else, and I'm walking right through the gay thing. The first thing in my mind was, well, these queers better not be looking at me. Pardon the slur, but you'll see where I'm coming full circle, all right? Okay. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. You got to think about where I came from. Mm-hmm. The very second thought, completely unbidden, without any logical thought, was I wanted to straighten up a little bit and go, well, why wouldn't they want to look at me? I'm all right. And I realized at that moment, that was the turning point where I realized I did not give a damn whether somebody was gay or straight, where I realized it really doesn't matter, when I was like, well, let me stand up and at least give them the best view I can. You know what I'm saying? You can't be too terribly prejudiced when you're,
You ain't got a stitch on.
Whatever. Yeah, you do what you do. But had I never put myself in the position to be at the nude beach, standing in the middle inadvertently of the, the gay area of the Haulover Beach, I would not have learned that lesson. So I think my point in bringing that up is that if you can take yourself out of your comfort zone, back to Q's suggestion about sometimes family and friends are what keeps you, whatever it is that's keeping you from accepting or at least considering a new position. You don't have to consider it. Like, it didn't make me gay. I wasn't like, oh, look at that dude over there. Oh, he shaves his chest or whatever. It never even occurred to me that I was going to be gay, but I still wanted to put my best foot forward. I don't know, folks. When you get out of your comfort zone, you'll learn something. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, then you're probably not open-minded enough. I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's all I got to say about that. Q. It's been 61 minutes. 61 minutes? 61 minutes. Can you believe it?
Yeah, I can. I said it once. I said 1,000 times.
So traditionally, at the end of Vendor Chronicles, it's Q's responsibility to leave us some words of wisdom.
Okay.
Sometimes he defers that to somebody else. It's completely up to him. So this is Q with words of wisdom. I want to hear what you got to say, brother.
Let's hear it.
I want to extend the honor to Miss Jenna if she would
I
like. If not, I would.
Words of wisdom.
It's your privilege if you would like.
If I can just say real quick, there's been a lot of words of wisdom already from Miss Janna tonight.
I'm like,
we're not in a drought for sure.
Because I think the well is run dry. You know what? I was on the phone with my friend today.
Uh-oh. Okay.
And this just came to me. I was on the phone with my friend today, and she said something, and I texted to my sister because I was like, this is, and I think it might actually be, I think it is relevant to what we were talking about. Mm-hmm, so I said, my friend just said, everything I want to do is at the expense of the old me. And I felt like that was a message for both of us. So I sent it to my sister. And I feel like, I don't know. I just feel like that kind of encompasses everything that we talked about.
Everything I want to do is at the expense
of the old me.
Of the old me.
Mm-hmm. Everything that you want to be, all of those goals that you want to reach.
So like what we do now in the present, our future self will reap the benefits.
Yes. In
a sense.
But you have to let go of the things that current you is doing that's holding you back from that.
Correct.
And I was like, wow. Yeah.
Can you say that one more time?
Everything, hang on. I haven't committed to memory yet. Everything I want to do is at the expense of the old me. Everything I want to do is at the expense of the old me. And I don't know if that originates with her, but it's the first time I heard it. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Hey, if that resonate, let it marinate. If it don't apply, let it fly. This is Vendor Chronicles. We're out.
Peace.
Oh, peace? Okay.